Hello, Board Game Shenanigans here. This is a bit of a different type of video. I wanted to look at a case study, really, of like a board game publisher and see how they've performed and the type of games they've been making and how I think they have been run as a company and where I think they could improve and where I think like they should be criticised. I've started with Steamforged Games as an example here because I think they're very polarizing company on the internet, and there's very large amount of people who are very a lot of hate against this company and always talking bad about them, always criticizing things that they do, even when it's not justified. I think they do get hate just because of they like past things they've done, and I think it's not that they've like the worst company in the world or they make the worst games in the world. I just think that there's like this very negative opinion of them on the internet, and once you've got that, it's very hard to get rid of. So this is kind of a follow-up to my last video where I talked about Aeon Trespass Odyssey, and near the end I brought up about how Elden Ring was a large campaign game that they made, and there was a lot more complaints about that game, saying, oh, it's too expensive, and how the ratings were like downvoted on Board Game Geek and things like that. So that kind of got me thinking about it, and I decided to make this video instead and follow up on it. So just to first cover like their website. Their website, I think, is quite well designed. You know, you've got these little tabs and you can click through different games and see different things that they've got coming up. And a very normal thing that you notice about Steamforged Games is they're very video game focused. So like most of the things that they make are to do with video games, and if it isn't, it's usually like an RPG type thing. They're making minis. I think most what they make is about that, and they do some good articles on here showing off games on the run up to new campaigns, and then when a Kickstarter kicks off, that's where all the news for that game goes. So like as soon as Monster Hunter World starts, they stopped talking about it here in the blog, but they moved it onto the Kickstarter. So I guess to bring it back to when they started with this campaign on Guildball, which it goes under the Guildball name on there, but this is what they made. This is what they were managing after when they started, and they started off as like a board game store, and they decided like let's make our own game, and this is where the grassroots of it, where they started out. And with Guildball, it was a very, people would get into it. This game got £93,000, which quite a small campaign, but back then it was a bit better than what you usually expect anyway. In 2014 is when they estimated. It was 2014 when they started this, so there were people who were into this and thought it was good. And I think then there's a bit of more of a, I think maybe rewriting a history. People like to think about this game and think it was more important than it was. I think it got them on the map to make a game, but then they come around with like, if you go on like the Board Game Geek page, it's not like it was an overtly popular game. 400 ratings. Not too many people were playing this. 817 own. It wasn't like the most amazing game ever made. People got into it, but I think that it was just kind of there, a bit like Blood Bowl type of thing. People had it in the mind that it was like a follow up to that in like football and fantasy football, not American football, but the other type, the English football. But so they made this, and at one point they decided to drop support, and that was about 2020. So I think some of that was, I think this article goes into it, it's like COVID related, or like they can't really support anymore. They were finally decided to finish it. And I do see people a lot of hate on this. They go, oh, I can't believe what they did to Guildball. I'm never going to back a game from them again after what they did to Guildball. But the fact of the matter is, really, Guildball was never that popular. It didn't get in what they wanted. They weren't making money off it. The first time I saw Guildball in a store, it was in the bargain bin. It was 80% off. No one wanted it. And this is before 2020. This is pre the time they stopped supporting it. The people weren't buying it. It was just getting dusty on the shelves, really. not really many people were playing it. I think that, if you wanted a tabletop game, people were playing something else. They weren't really bothering with this game. So that's my general thoughts on that. I think that this is one of those points where I think because people already hate them with the other stuff they've made, they retroactively start hating Guildball and saying, I can't believe Guildball's bad. They just find another excuse to hate them, I think. So to cover their main things that they do, it's Kickstarter. They do Kickstarter games. This is where they put them all, and they've just signed a new deal to make more games exclusively to Kickstarter. They do retail on the side, but those games are usually much smaller. They're not as popular, and sometimes I think they're not very good. I think the best games that they make, they're going to be these Kickstarter games, the ones that are funding on here and they're putting all the marketing into. So to go through from like the beginning, Dark Souls is the one. That's what put them really in people's eyes and find out who they were. It's the biggest campaign they've ever done, and it was one of the first massive Kickstarters, really. This is still one of the top funded, and it's the first, I guess the first board game Kickstarter I was aware of. Like the first thing that got me aware of how board games can be on Kickstarter, and I saw all the different expansions and things like that, and it kind of put me off, I think, because I didn't realize how the board game industry can be and how expensive it can be. I was more like very into video games at this time when this was live. I'd only been starting to dabble in board games and with like other friends and stuff. And then when this Kickstarter came out, I saw the cost and saw how many little different add-ons they made, and it just like blew my mind how the board game industry could be, especially on Kickstarter. And then just to quickly go through, they've done Resident Evil, their own game God Tier, Critical Role like Miniatures, Horizon, big Sony game, and then Devil May Cry, Resident Evil again, Bardsong, another main big game that they've made, like designed around like Dungeons and Dragons, and then made their own board game type of thing based on that type of fantasy. Monster Hunter, Resident Evil, RuneScape, Epic Encounters, Youthia, Rivet Wars, Elden Ring, Monster Hunter World, Iceborne. So generally, common trend is they're either doing RPG type miniatures and stuff, or they're doing IP games on video games with a few little board games sprinkled in that they've made themselves. Overall, I think that's a decent enough business model. I think you can pull people in based on IP alone. I mean, yes, they're still doing it, 13,000 people, but I think that after that initial Dark Souls, it's really tainted their image, and I'll go into that in a second. But first, I wanted to cover the Rivet Wars. So Rivet Wars is a game that they bought from Simon, and then they've done this campaign, and the campaign had 1,766 backers, so it's a very small game. No one really cared about it that much. It was just something that they kind of picked up and decided they want to make because really they just cared about the game. They thought it was a cool game, and they wanted to follow up on that. And I think that this is it can be seen as a positive or negative about the company. So they will take a chance on things, and they'll just make it because they want to do it. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that they should be doing this, because I think if Simon wants to sell it, it's probably not going to make money, because Simon knew it wasn't a money maker. Because Simon is massive, they're bigger than Steamforged. They would know if this is not a good game anymore, it wasn't going to make money. They would be making it themselves. So I think that sort of thing, it kind of, is it a good business decision or not? Up to debate, really. So then you go into Dark Souls, and £3.7 million, massive game, and it's been around for a long time now. It was estimated in April 2017, I think, about right. It did come out around that year, I think. But the thing with this game is they put so much into it, and this is too, going from 90 grand on Guildball, and then this is their first big campaign. It's like, it's outrageous. They probably just bit off more than they could chew, and they realised that quite early on. And I think this game got shipped in like 4 waves, so they had 4 waves of shipping for this. So that's how over the top they went. And I didn't even know the videos had gone private, but some of them aren't here anymore, so you can't even see the campaign as it was. But you know, like, whoa, £28 for another mini, £28 for another mini, and some of these, you know, they're hard to get now. You can't really get them that often. I mean, they do resell them, but for a much higher price than this. £28. It's like, this is what I didn't realise how board game was when I saw this campaign. I was like, oh, I'll just buy the game, yeah, £80, yeah, get that pledge. And then I think I just turned off at the end. I was like, well, actually, I want to get everything, and then I'd have to add all this stuff for hundreds. And they didn't have a all-in pledge at this time, and this is in 2016. So just the thing about this, really, it's like, this is where all the trouble started. I think they made it so big, it got delayed for all the different content. You know, the stretch goals were years later, and people just didn't really like this game that much. I think they thought it was pretty average. Personally, I've played it once, and I did enjoy what I had there. I think that with Dark Souls and this type of game in general, people think Dark Souls, the video game, is difficult. Personally, I've never seen it as a difficult game. And I'm not saying that to be like, I'm really good at video games. I just think that the thing with Dark Souls and Bloodborne, Elden Ring, all these games, it's just about the grind, really. You level up your stuff, your equipment, your skills, and your armor, and then you go back into the same boss and you'll destroy them. That's the gist of Dark Souls and all these games. But I think that this board game actually kind of fit that well, because it was like, you know, you got to kill these enemies again. Yeah, you know they're coming back alive. You got to kill them again. You got to get that XP. You got to get your new armor. You got to get those more powerful dice. You've got to fight them. So I think it did actually fit the theme quite well with that. And I think some people might be put off by that, but that's what Dark Souls is. And I think if you want to replicate it, that's what you have to do. You got to say, you know, grind it out, because that's what these games are. They're grinds in the video game form. I know that people might not like it in board games because they're different, but I would say that you should, because they're just accept it, because that's what it should be. I mean, it's not even a campaign type game. It's like one session to the mini boss and then a boss, I think. So it does take a long time to play at one session, but yeah, in general, I think it is probably an average game, but I think it's well more hated. I've heard people say it's the worst game ever made. It's nowhere near the worst game ever made. It's better than other games of a similar campaign and miniature style, but also there's many other games that aren't that type of game that are worse as well. I found it interesting enough as well that this game, the board game of Dark Souls, actually has its own Wikipedia page, but the Steamforged don't even have a Wikipedia page themselves. So that's how popular this game was. Someone decided to make a Wikipedia article about it, even though no Steamforged or other board games don't usually get that. I think that was quite interesting. I'm not going to go every single game they made, but here's another one, Devil May Cry. So this game is the only Kickstarter game from Steamforged I've actually backed. It's the only one. 2,449 backers, so I'm in the very small minority for this one, and £159,000, you know, just like double Guildball, really. So it's a tiny game that got really, and it was a good value. I got the early bird here, so £70, everything. Yeah, that's great. I enjoyed that. The game, if you want to know what it plays like, it's a bit like Oathsworn. If you've played that game, the combat is like on a hex grid, and you do chain combos for cards. And if you've played the new Monster Hunter World game, this will look very familiar. It's the same type of system. You chain cards together, and it's not actually a co-op game. It's a competitive game where whoever makes the most points wins. So you just fight the enemies, and whoever kills like the best with the most cards, like through combos, wins. So it was a very good game. I really enjoy it. I thought it was good, good value for what it is, and I think it's kind of just dropped off the radar and no one really talked about it. And I think that's another problem, which I'll get into later, about videos and how they promote their games and what I feel about what they've been doing with that. And if you know what I'm talking about, you can probably see what I'm talking about when I'm scrolling through here. But this was a good game. And another thing with customer service here, there was an issue with this production, and they'd made the miniatures, and they'd made them where they needed to be glued to the base by accident. Like the factory had miscommunicated things. And instead of just like shipping it as is, Steamforged were like, right, here's what's happened. We're gonna make an extra mini set for everyone, and they just shipped them out. And it wasn't even like a late campaign. It was like came like the month after this or 2 months after the July estimate. And they were like, here you go, you get an extra set of minis. So you get these bosses. You got another one of this for the massive minis. You get one of these, and you got another one of these. So I've got 2 of these minis each. It's like really nice. Just like you didn't have to do that, You didn't even really explain how they were supposed to be sold. You just said we wanted them to be push fit, but they made them glued by accident. Here you go. They could have just said you still got to glue them. They never really advertised that, so they just went, there you go, we fixed it for you, have 2 minis. So I think that's a positive from them. The only issue I've had, they've sorted it out quite quickly and been helpful and give you free stuff, so that's a positive for them. Other games that they've done like Monster Hunter, so this is the old one. I was like tossing and turning whether to get this game at the time, and I didn't, and then I went to late pledge and didn't get it, and then they came back to late pledge and I still didn't get it, so I never really committed down to getting this game, even though I'm a big Monster Hunter fan of the video games. I do think that it's probably a good value here, getting what you get in all the monsters, and I think it would be get everything for this, because you want the variety of the monsters here in each box, and the characters, there's all the playable characters. But overall, just it did well, this one. I mean, like 20,000 people, so people went in it. I think people are liking this now, and I think because I already had the Devil May Cry, I didn't want to get the same game. It's just the same game but co-op, really. I think it's the same designer as well, so it's almost like the same game, so I never bothered to get it. And then a few others like RuneScape. I was big into RuneScape when I was younger, the video game. I played it all the time, with friends and stuff. I just had like hours and days and years into this game. I think my account's almost like nearing 20 years old now. It's like that is like a long part of my life. I was playing this game, and then time to time I go back and play it again. It's like I'm still into it. I think with this game, I think the marketing was a bit bad. I think they didn't know what they were doing. They could have got more people like in the RuneScape community involved, and the game just looks a bit dull overall. I think they could have made it look a bit fancier. It just looks a bit bland. There's not much to it, and no marketing really. It just kind of appeared and disappeared quickly, and the main people getting it are probably like RuneScape players. I think there wasn't many board game people that interested in this. A few more Elden Ring again, as I covered in the last video. Elden Ring, yeah, this is like the beginning of it. They're going to keep going with more and more and more as time goes on, but I think that this campaign was managed a bit better, especially because it's just a massive game. But again, there's like a lot of these games are all video games, they're all IP based, and you've got to have a completely different audience. And I think when I get into why I think this company's got issues, I think it is to do with the audience type of thing, really. The way they're trying to sell these games, it's not working, and how they get people involved with the game. It's like they're very, I guess, secretive maybe. They're in like their own little club. Like these were like YouTubers they've invited in to come play with them, or they've come to meet them instead of having like a just sending out copies to people. They're doing the opposite. They we're bringing the copy to you, or you're coming to us. That's the way they're doing it. They're not doing it like other companies do it. They're very trying to make it their own way. I don't know. I'd see how it works out for them, but other than that, they've just done Iceborne again. Almost wanted to get it, and kind of just backed out last minute. I might get it later, but it's like, they could have just made it so it interacts with the old one, but they've kind of made it so, it kind of does, kind of doesn't. They should have just tried to design it so it's like a follow-up and everything actually works. I mean, they've got their, who are we, this statement here, I mean, I know there's a lot of people who disagree with that, I think, But you know, they offer a lot with this one. I think it's got more from the last one, so higher price. But you know, now they've had to change the VAT because I think there's a difference between the UK and the EU now, so they have to charge it. So, you know, 20% on top if you're in the UK, that's not amazing prices anymore. So that's just a little run through some of their campaigns, but of course they've done more Resident Evil games, things like that. To go back to their website, some of their games, like, you know, they've done like Sea of Thieves with Microsoft, you know, Rare, Microsoft. So they're doing a lot more games retail. Like, this isn't coming to Kickstarter, it's just straight to retail done. I think that's how the way that Microsoft games are working. Then we've got Gears of War as well. They announced this years ago. It was during one of the competitive Gears of War events, and it just kind of went blank. It didn't appear again, and then suddenly it's just out this year. You know, like 3 years just vaporware, not even talking about it, not even showing what it's about, and then it just appears again. And I think they could have capitalized by releasing this near the time of a Gears of War game, but they didn't. They missed Gears of War 5 release, and now they're not making one for many years because they're designing a new engine. So it's just completely, they've missed the opportunity to capitalize with another game. So I don't think this is going to be doing that well, to be honest. So just a few little news things here or there. So we've got there was recently a restructuring. They've got rid of 20 people, redundancies, and you know, redundancies, you know, seems like a bad thing for the industry or for this business, but overall, I think some of this is poor management where they've actually hired all these people to fulfill the games that they're doing to try and get things out quicker, but then they've kind of they've got the bad publicity about it now because people are like, well, you're getting rid of employees. That's not a healthy sign of a business because, you know, you're making all these board games, but you're not got the you want to get rid of employees. That means you've overhired, and they should have just hired temporary contracts instead of permanent. If they have to do redundancies, they should have just said, we're going to need this many people for 6 months and then you're gone. You know, they could have hired that way rather than let's hire loads of new people and then just sack them all because we don't need them for that long. I think that maybe they could have organised that a bit better, which, you know, they say, oh, they have to, it's redundancy. I mean, you know, redundancy's fine and all that. It's part of business. You know, you have to do it sometimes, but you want to try and prevent it. And I think having people jobs and then getting rid of them, and they did a big hiring spree the previous year just to meet the demands of the games they were making. Yeah, it's just a bit of a bad sign, I think, overall. Then they've just come out with this, that they're going to do a big partnership with Kickstarter with 3 new games coming out after, well, it was 4 games. One of them, I think, is the Monster Hunter game that they've just made. So there's 3 more coming this year. This is, you know, it's a positive because they've got a continuous flow of revenue and games coming out and things like that. But, you know, they still have 7 of those games that we looked at earlier. They still haven't shipped, from like Resident Evil to the new Monster Hunter. So 7 projects they haven't finished, and they've got 3 more to come. How many of those are going to ship this year? They have to do at least 3, so they don't get any higher how many games they haven't finished. To go into that as well, they've got with these 3 games, I'm going to put like a prediction here. I think one's going to be Resident Evil 4, because it'd be poor to not capitalize on that right now when they've just remade the game. I think they need to put one of them out, a new Resi. It's the next one on the list, get it done. And I think one will be a new IP from SFG, their own game. And I think another one will be a Microsoft game. I think it'll be Bethesda or Microsoft, some sort of board game. It won't be Elder Scrolls because other people have been making those games, but I think it could be like Halo or something like that. That could probably come out from them. Just a few little other things to look at here. So this is their top rated games, and I find it interesting that Utia comes up first because this isn't their game, this is someone else's game, but because they're publishing it now, it counts for them. So it's a bit of it's a good sign that they know quality and they decide to buy up a game and selling it themselves and publishing it for the Utia developer. But if that's doing better than all their other games, I think they need to make these games go up so their own games are getting to this quality and this level of mass appeal. Well, Dark Souls follows up, so even despite all the negativity, it still does well. It's still owned by people. It's still got a decent rating. I mean, in 6.5, it's got a lot of downvotes in there, but overall, its rank is putting it a bit higher, and it's higher than Guildball, so it does make it seem like you can see 10 times the amount of people say they own it on here. So he's doing better than Guildball. And you got Resident Evil, Dark Souls, Bard Song, God Tier, the new Monster Hunter, Resi. So all these, it's mainly their Kickstarter games that sit at the top. Dark Souls card game is a separate one there, but I think that was like a follow up to that. Yeah, they were same time, so they kind of did a mini one on the side. And it's Devil May Cry, the only one I own. I do own the Sonic card game, which I got for cheap, but I think that's going to be down the bottom somewhere. I don't think that's popular at all. It's below all the expansions. Probably the last page, isn't it? Yep. Bottom of the barrel. 33 owners. Yeah, this kind of came out of nowhere. No one rated it. No one cared about it. I only bought it because it was in a charity shop. So if you're an American, it's like a thrift store. Just cheap. Someone sold it and give it away for free. So that's how well that game did, because no one really wanted it. Probably like a Christmas present someone didn't want. Notice that Sea of Thieves also here has some downvotes. I mean, it's 4.3 from 3 people, but it seems like, there's still the negative connotation of Steamforged Games. They release a game, and then some people spam some negative reviews to make it bottom of the charts, it seems. Which I don't think it's deserved. I don't think they need to do that for every single game unless there's a reason for it. So then a little thought about how they do the management of things here. They've got the YouTube videos that they do, and I see that they kind of do these, and they're really just they've got their own little club of people who that they want to share the game with, who want the game to show off. Even if they're not sponsored videos, they're just still they selected a small group of people who they will allow to come to their studio, or they go to their country or wherever to stay with them to cover the game. So you've got the Board Game Code team here in this one, and then you got a Quackle Open here and some others. So they just invite a few people over, do a few playthroughs, and instead they don't do what other people do and just send a copy and they review it on their own time. They go, no, you got to come, set a time and play with us on camera. I think this is like the What Culture guy. So they've got all these these a few select people that they do coverage with, and this is kind of developed over time. So they didn't used to do this, so this is very modern. They did it with Monster Hunter, they did it with Elden Ring, and then they've come around to, if you go back to things like RuneScape, not many people covered it. It was no marketing whatsoever. They just kind of did a few videos here, and there is a few other videos, but if you go back to all the games, they kind of just covered it themselves, showed it off, and moved on. There was not really many reviews. I think there was some for the Monster Hunter, but when I was thinking about Devil May Cry earlier, all the videos were the ones they made. They didn't have Devil May Cry reviews out there. It was just, here's Devil May Cry, here's all the videos we've made for it, and back it if you want it. It wasn't, look, we've got these reviewers talking about it. It didn't happen. So they've done a big flip from what they used to do. Now they actually have other people give their opinions on it, but again, it's very selective. It's the kind of the soft criticism you're going to get. They're going to be people who work with them, come and do these events, but they're not actually just, an organic, just someone's give the game to someone and they'll just give them their honest opinion. It's just, we're going to show you how to play the game. We're going to talk you through every step. And they're just planned out that way. And you can see it with Elden Ring as well. Overview. This is someone who went to play the game. Same with the Board Game Co. And here's both of them playing together with the designer. It's kind of like that. They're just kind of, the videos you get, they're just ones that are artificial. They're not honest videos. And I know that you can have an issue with that, giving a free copy to someone. You can bias them a bit, but it's a bit different. I think, to me, when you just have selected people rather than just handing it out to random people who have asked for it or you think have a good channel. And they still do it very limited. Very few channels are covering it. Like, I know Tabletop Duo here, he doesn't, he's covering it based on what he's seeing on the campaign, but some of these other channels, the ones that actually have the game, they're just ones who've been answered, you know, they've been asked to come and do it. And to go back to RuneScape, the only channels are like Quackalope and this is Board Game Co. on the other channel here. So very few people cover that game. So that's why it just didn't do that well. I mean, it didn't look that good, but it needed like some more RuneScape and video game people involved, I believe. I think that having it the way they did, it didn't really work out for them. You know, kind of games just kind of there. It's not really that exciting to anyone. So other than that, I kind of listed some positives here about what is good about them and what's kind of negative. So I'll just list them off here. Like, the positives will be that I think they do have good customer service. So I mentioned how they, you know, sent out those minis to me and everyone involved with that campaign. That's a positive for them. You know, they follow up and actually give you the games, and you know, if they make something wrong, they'll fix it. And I think they did the same with a RPG book for Dark Souls. They went and gave everyone a new copy because they had a misprint in there. So again, good customer service overall. And I think they do, another positive, they do care about the games that they make. You know, they're making like Rivet Wars, and they went and invested in Youthia. You know, these games that they cared about, they didn't have to do all that, but they went, right, let's do it. And, you know, Youthia, you know, they're sharing the money with the developer for that, and Rivet Wars didn't make as much as they thought, but they wanted it to make it anyway because they actually cared about the games they were making. And I think also another positive is they know when to let go of a game. I think, you know, things like Guildball, it wasn't doing well for them. They knew they had to just stop making it. It wasn't making them the money they needed. I think they know when to stop. I mean, if you keep supporting a game that's not making you money, it's a bad business decision. So I think that's a positive for them there. And there's also the positive that they've got all these big companies behind them. You know, Microsoft, they've got Capcom, Sony. So all these other video game companies, they're coming in and, you know, offering them deals to make these board games. So that's a positive for them. They've got some security there to fall back on what the publishers of these video games want, and they just make them and design them how they meet that demand, really. And that's another positive. They just keep turning video games into board games, which it's a general positive. You know, if you like video games, you know, you like seeing them in a board game form as well, and it's something to play, and, you know, the game will probably be decent enough to enjoy, and it'll probably meet what you feel should be necessary for that type of board game. And again, they do a lot of another positive. They do a lot of long-term games. So like Elden Ring, they've just started, but it's only like the early part of the video game. They're going to keep going with another campaign, and try and cover the entire game over many years. Same with Monster Hunter. They've just done a follow-up. It's just they're going to do it again. They're going to have another campaign with Iceborne, and it's just they're gonna do another one after probably, and then they keep going and going until they pretty much know all the Monster Hunter content they can. Same with Resident Evil as well. They've done 3 of those, so it just keeps going and going. They keep supporting the same systems and the same types of games. And I guess the last positive I could think of was that they do actually learn from the mistakes. So games like the Dark Souls, they have, you know, retooled the rules, they have done follow-ups and things like that. So they have improved over time with what they do, and they do take some of the criticism about the games on board. And, you know, Monster Hunter, you know, they're going to improve this one based on the feedback of the original. And I think that overall, they can be a decent company, and, you know, they do care about the games they're making. So I do think that they do get a bit more hate than they should. But with my negatives, I would say that having that many campaigns that they've got at the moment, I mean, they've got these campaigns. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 campaigns, and 8 if you include this if they haven't shipped out to everyone yet. 8 campaigns, 7 campaigns not fulfilled yet. That's quite a lot of stuff that they've got a backlog to do, and they've got 3 more planned this year. That can be a negative there. I think another negative, they've got the bad PR already. People see this name and they just shudder a bit. They don't want to deal with it. I think it's too much for some people. They're like, no, I've done Dark Souls. I'm not playing this next game. That's it. I'm not buying another game from them. And I think that's just, it's hard to get rid of. You can't get rid of bad PR that easily. Another negative, the reviewing system they have. I think when they're just sending it out to, sending out people or bringing people to them, they're not sending the game. I think it's like, it's a mix really. You can tell instantly that it's like, it's not sponsored necessarily, but it's selective. It's selective criticism. You're not going to know anything that honest about the games that you're seeing. So it's a mix really. You can tell just by looking at it that it glows and you think it's going to be, it's from someone who's in with the developer there, but at the same time, it's still a negative to me personally because it's just, there's no organic criticism coming from anyone. Another negative, I think they're poorly managed as a business, to be honest. If they're hiring loads of people to finish these games, but then they have to lay them off, they've not got security of their jobs there with people who work there. So I think they needed better management of that and planning for what they actually needed. Temporary employees would have been an easier system than doing redundancies after the fact. So I think they need better management. I think they bite off more they can chew with a lot of these games. So, Dark Souls, it was massive. And same with all these games like Horizon. They make these Elden Ring probably as well. They're going to make these massive games, and there's going to be some issues in there. There's going to be quality issues. There's going to be erratas, and there's going to be just some things that aren't tested as well. So I think that needs to be something they need to manage better. And I think this kind of is a follow-up to some of the positives I had with them, but it's also kind of a negative as well. Like, they're making these games, but they're making them even if they're bad. Like, they release them out the door, even if they're bad. So they've got your Rivet Wars. Not many people into it. It could come out as a bad game, and they just did it anyway. They put it out the door because they had to, because they got the backers. And it's same with other games like the Sonic card game, or I think it was the Ni no Kuni 2 board game. These games are just, not very good, but they just push them out the door anyway, just to make money, just to make a quick buck off retail, or even through Kickstarter. Like, some of these games, they're just going to rush them out, and people like Bardsong, I think people were disappointed with it at the end. Like, they could have put it in the oven a bit more and worked on it and fixed it. They have 10,000 backers. They should make it as best as possible. And I think also, the overall thing I see with Steamforged and people who don't like them, it's video gamers. They're not board gamers. I think they're trying to market towards video gamers, but video game people are a completely different ball game than board gamers. Trying to sell Elden Ring the board game to an Elden Ring video game player, it's, you're talking to a brick wall there. They're not going to see it the same way. They're going to see that price and go, £380, I'm not paying that. I'll get a PS5 instead. And they don't get it. They don't understand what board games are like. So you have to think about this, and then they need to market it better. I think their marketing team needs to rethink how they advertise these video game board games to people to get them on board. And a few little suggestions I say that they can improve on. I think they need someone better doing PR to advertise and talk to people about games, because a lot of the time it is these designers talking about it. I think they just need to hire someone just to be the guy who goes around in the comment sections and can cover things for like understanding how video game people work and understanding how what people want. I think they need a bit more. I think there was a bit of the last two campaigns, we had the King of Average thing where it's like, we need the textured bases and things like that. People spam that, but there's other things that they need to do. But if you just get people on board to spam about what they want, I think that'll improve things better and have changes made that are better than just like a textured base. Because a lot of people, they're not really bothered too much about that. A lot of people who like textured bases are going to do it themselves with some like gravel and paint and glue, I think that there's more important things like how you're managing the game, how you quality testing the game, how you're gonna do make sure there's longevity of the game and replayability. There's better things to focus on. How you're gonna stop it being a grind. There's other things that they need to focus more on, and we just need to push on with that really against them. So yeah, just my general thoughts here. I know it's a bit of a long video, but I don't think many people have just gone through something like this and covered what they think about a board game company and how they think they can make improvements. And I'm giving a balanced approach here. I don't think they're the worst company in the world, but there's definitely improvements, and so can any. I can see this any company whatsoever. Really, they've all got games, and of the only campaign I've backed, I've enjoyed it. It's a good game, and even though I think it might be the lowest back game here, isn't it? Besides the original Guildball. It's the lowest. Oh no, Rivet Wars. Yeah. So besides, Rivet Wars is second to the one I got. So maybe Rivet Wars is the one I like because I like the one that's no one's played. Yeah. Well, I think I've gone on long enough there anyway. So if you've listened through all this video, thank you very much for watching. More videos will be coming. I do enjoy making these videos and just talking, and I will make more higher quality videos because this one's really just me clicking through and looking at things and talking about it. But overall, I think that if you enjoy the video, give it a subscribe, like, share, and definitely comment. I want more interaction with people. I think that's the main reason why I've started to make videos. I want to talk to people and hear their opinions on things as well. So even if you think that Steamforged is the worst company in the world, I want to hear it. I want to hear if you think all these games are amazing. You love Dark Souls. Let me know. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.